Hello, hello. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Hope everybody who had to go back to work got things done. I I'm here. I am MongoSlade. This is Ask Mongo Anything for December 2024. I don't think we have a lot of questions in the queue today, so we might get out of here a little early. But there's no point in waiting around, I guess. We're gonna let some people roll in. We're gonna start answering questions post haste. So first we got Darren Miles. He has a bunch of questions, quite a few actually. Um, he started numbering them and then he stopped. He says, one, with all the relationship problems that's going on, do you think the USA have birth rate population problems like Japan? I think it just was announced recently about the United States birth rate actually being one of the lowest in history. I think the birth rate is a big problem in the United States, and it's not all abortion. It is also lifestyle decisions, it's also financial decisions, and part of it is young people are having difficult times. They're not getting married, they're not dating, they're not having sex. I'm not sure what it is, you know? If we go try to go buy something like bowling alone, I guess people are just too distracted by other things and not focused on family and building a family and maintaining a family, which is interesting. But I don't think we have birth problems like Japan or South Korea. It's not that bad yet, but it might be a few years away from, might not be far off from getting there. Second question: how can we, as a society, help guys that spend all their money on OnlyFans slash feel invisible? I'm guessing this is two different questions. Like, how can we help guys who spend all their money on OnlyFans, and how can we help guys who feel invisible? Well, the guys who feel invisible, you have to realize that individual decisions or individual lifestyles are going to cause that problem. If you're, I always say, fish in your own river, you're going to be invisible if you don't fit that woman's criteria. You know, um, so of course she's not going to be that interested at all in if you are trying to talk to her and you are in no way her type. She's just going to use you at that point. So if you want to help guys get women's attention, tell the guys to actually talk to the women who like them in the hobbies and different things that they already enjoy. Now, in terms of guys who spend all their money on OnlyFans, you have to realize what the success of OnlyFans is and how does somebody become successful on OnlyFans. Quite one of the reasons people become successful is they build relationships with the people, with the subscribers. It's the same thing as with YouTube and with streamers and etc. People like to build these parasocial relationships where you feel like you know the person. And the more of them you see, the more connected they feel. I always talk about some of these streamers who are addicted to streaming, like Kai Cenat, who showers on stream, believe it or not. A lot of his fans feel like they're very close to him, you know? Even though there's probably 100 million of them, there's no way you as an individual can feel like you have any sort of relationship with that guy. There is a sort of relationship with that guy. And it's the same thing with OnlyFans. All these guys know that they're not the only guy, but they know that they're one of the few guys who have a relationship with this woman. And if the woman does a good job of cultivating personal relationships, then the guys are going to spend more money. So if you want to help guys who are spending a ton of money on OnlyFans, You have to find other things and hope, and you would hope other people that would occupy his time, that would be worthy of him spending money on. But you also talk about guys who are spending money quite often on their fantasy, and there's not a price you can really put on that. If a guy is onto the OnlyFans account because this woman is his fantasy, or she's doing things that are in his wheelhouse sexually, there's not too much you could do about that. Uh, but my question would be, do they need help? And if they do need help, what kind of help? I think we all agree that it's pretty pathetic to spend all your money on OnlyFans. But if that's what people want to do, I mean, are we as a society upset with that? You know, but you got to realize that OnlyFans gives guys a personal connection to a woman who might be part of their fantasy, and it creates and quite often it gives them the ability to have even one-on-one time with her. Because I've gone to some OnlyFans pages, and you just look at the tiers, and quite often, obviously, the more expensive the tier, the better your relationship with that woman. You can get one-on-one DMs with her, you can get video chats with her, all that sort of stuff if you pay more money. So it's building relationship. What kind of relationship do you want to have? Do you just want to look at her pictures and that's it? Because she can charge you for that. She can still monetize that, but eventually you're going to get bored and go away. You know. But if you want to have a real relationship with her, you want to talk to her and have her talk to you, it's going to cost you. And quite often, that's what the guys are paying for. They're paying to live that fantasy. So it's kind of sick, but that's what it is. 3, why are they blaming Shawn Michaels instead of Rob Van Dam for the way indie wrestlers have matches that never made sense to me? Well, the article that Matt D wrote that I read that probably prompted this comment. I think he blamed Shawn because Shawn was in the WWF, and therefore it was national cable television, as opposed to Rob Van Dam, which was syndicated television and 2 in the morning, and people barely saw it. Now, I think over time, Rob did more damage. As Rob took what Shawn was doing and took it to the next level. But I think that's why Shawn essentially got blamed for it. Is he was the one? I don't want to say he influenced Rob Van Dam because they're kind of peers in a way, you know. Um, but there is some similarities between the two. But Shawn was doing that stuff on national television, and Rob was basically like a souped up indie wrestler. So basically, when you saw Shawn Michaels get to the top of the WWF doing that stuff, moonsaults outside the ring, it became, yeah, that should be something everybody should be doing, you know? And I think it was Shawn's level of success that really gets him the majority of the blame. If Shawn Michaels had not been successful, I don't think it would have mattered. Because there was plenty of guys doing high flying stuff in the territory days, but they never became top guys. So nobody really cared that much. His next question, which is question 4, how come the Attitude Era is never blamed for some of the downfall of wrestling? Well, you've been on this channel enough to know I blame the Attitude Era for quite a bit. I think when you look at other channels, is they look at it as if, hey, it was popular, and popular equals good. And if it was popular, it couldn't have done any damage. But what I say is the Attitude Era turned wrestling into Tickle Me Elmo, Beanie Babies, and a bunch of other fads, you know? People were not in it for the long haul. They were in it for the fad. And once the fad was over, they left. You know, and the I think the business got too used to the attention that they were getting, especially in the WWF, because you saw from the Attitude Era, they started to slowly but surely ramp up quite a few of the things that they were doing. Like the Vince McMahon character got worse in the 2000s than he was in the 90s. The sexual stuff got worse in the 2000s than it was in the 90s. The violence got worse in the 2000s than it did in the 90s because they got addicted to the attention that they were getting from the Attitude Era. So they basically took it to the next level. We started having hot lesbian action, catfight girls, Vince wrestling pretty much every week when it was only him wrestling every once in a while. His character being more exposed, him doing the sexual stuff with the various different divas and women, which of course has come back to bite him in the ass now. And a lot of the other things, because those things that worked in the Attitude Era. And so they said, oh, well, it worked in 98. It'll still work in 2004. Not realizing that there's a large amount of time between 1998 and 2004. He has another question. He has two more. Well, one more. He has a bunch more, but I think it's a two-part question. He says, have you ever had a bad Christmas? My aunt got me doing yard work for a party during Eve Christmas. um, I think this year is probably my worst Christmas. And nothing terrible even happened. Not to me anyway. But it was very stressful. And I wasn't feeling the Christmas cheer this year. So this year is probably one of the worst Christmases, but I've never had like a Christmas where like something went terribly wrong or anything like that. So I haven't outside of just I didn't feel the holiday spirit this year. I didn't really have the best Christmas, but I can't complain either. I'm above ground and everybody I love is still alive so far. Next, it says, why do women live vicariously through joining, creating stan pages? That's a good question. That's a good question. I think when you look at something like cosplaying and stan pages, which I didn't even, I stumbled into stan pages all the time on social media. And sometimes those are not girls or women, okay? But sometimes they are. And when you see like the pop star pages, the Beyonce stuff, like again, it's not always females when it comes to Beyonce and stuff like that. I think that they just love the attention that these people get and they want a little bit of it for themselves. And there's also women. I was about to say women love, but it's not fair to say that. Human beings love social hierarchies. And if you are in a social hierarchy where you and all of your friends are Taylor Swift fans, you might want to climb that hierarchy to become the biggest Taylor Swift fan that you know. And, I remember when there was a Taylor Swift concert here in Detroit, I didn't know what the hell was going on, but all the white girls were walking around in cowboy boots. And I was like, why? They had the little hats on and everything. And I was like, why? What's happening here? And somebody says, oh, Taylor Swift's going to be downtown. Oh, every white girl that I saw was dressed like Taylor Swift. And some of them had a stan page because that's their social circle now. We're all Taylor Swift fans, but do you have, I mean, back in the day used to be, do you have all her albums? Oh, you might have all her albums, but did you collect the posters? Well, you might have all the albums, you might be collecting posters, but you know, do you know her tour schedule? Are you recording all the music videos just to be the biggest fan? And I'm thinking there's a little bit of that in these stan pages. is people wanting to be the biggest fan. And I also think that sometimes people just take an immense amount of pride in their fandoms. And much like, you may stumble across one of the ever humorous Goku Twitter account, which is like, okay, but it's one of those things where people are cosplaying and they're just having fun. That's another thing where sometimes it's fans wanting everybody to know that they're the biggest fan, and like being a part of something. And celebrity culture is one of those things, especially that women like. They're big fans of that. His next question is: have you ever watched The Sopranos? The answer to this question is no. I've seen episodes of The Sopranos, but I've never watched it like from beginning to end. His next question says, "What's the best shoot interview you've ever seen?" The Raven shoot interviews. He did some, I believe, for Ring of Honor, where he was talking about what wrestling is and heels and baby faces and how to break down a wrestling match. It was like a 3-part thing, maybe even longer, and they were like 2 hours apiece. I really only watched like two or three of them, but they were fascinating in terms of learning how the business works, and you can actually visualize it as he's talking about it. Which is shame that Raven doesn't work backstage for somebody right now, and those things were great. Um, there's probably some other shoot interviews. I'm not really a big shoot interview guy, but there's probably some more I could probably think of if I put some real thought into it. But right off the top of my head would be the Raven interviews that he did with Ring of Honor. He says, "What is your opinion of lyrical miracle spiritual papoose getting cheated on?" Well, it's a thing that has been discussed for quite a while. You know, it actually came out like a year or two ago that the two of them were having issues and maybe even had broken up. And my thing is, it's truly sad because Papoose and Remy went through so much. He was with her when she was in jail, and you could tell that she probably didn't really want to be with him, but felt like she had to because he was the one guy who was stood by her side while she was in jail. And they got out and they started doing reality TV, and he started talking about having a baby. She was resistant to that. I know she ended up having the baby eventually, but she was kind of resistant to having his baby. You know, it's hard. I mean, relationships fall apart, which is sad and it's terrible because again, he was there with her the entire time she went through that whole thing about shooting her friend. He was there, kept her name alive and everything. And this is how she treated him. But she's a scumbag. I mean, the thing is, Remy Ma is a nigga in heels. That's just, it is what it is. You can listen to her voice and just tell. For starters, she's some roughneck broad from New York. She's a dude in a dress. I've never I've never seen ladylike qualities from Remy Ma, so I'm not surprised at all that she would do this. You know, and so I'm not surprised. And when it all hit the fan, it is crazy that it really didn't hit the fan and splatter everywhere until Papoose moved on, which I say is a much credit to him because he didn't really speak on it. He didn't really confirm or deny anything until he was moved on. Once he confirmed that he had another girl, then he confirmed that, oh yeah, she did cheat. Yeah, I did smack the dude that she cheated with. All this stuff that was floating around in the internet for over a year that he wouldn't talk about. He confirmed it once he had got him a new broad, and he was like, okay, we can talk about this now. Like you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. So it's a shame, but uh, Remy's a Remy's as close to a man as you're gonna be able to get, bro. And if you, I didn't even know who the guy was that she supposedly screwed around with until a clip of him floating around online. He sounds very tiny. He sounds very small. He sounds like a man that she can move around. To be quite honest, So I mean, it is what it is. It's gross though. It's real gross shit. She sucks. Next question: do you think the Undertaker was good during the ruthless aggression through the 2010s? Yes. Um, I still think that he was struggling with the way he was being booked because he was being booked still to wrestle Heidenreich and the Great Khali and Vladimir Kozlov and Mark Henry, which that kind of stuff. He still struggled quite a bit with the booking. It would seem like Vince was trying to relive the '90s at that time, where it's King Kong Bundy and it's Giant Gonzalez and it's Mabel and it's Yokozuna, it's Undertaker Monster versus Monster, which doesn't equate to him having good matches. But when he was allowed to get in there with Kurt Angle, he was allowed to get in there with, Shawn, of course, Triple H. I think that he showed how good he was. We've had a fantastic run of matches with Randy, and this is a young Randy too. Fresh off of Evolution. This was Randy's breakout, was feuding with Undertaker. He'd already been world champion, but this was his breakout, his opportunity to be the man was feuding with Undertaker. And I think Undertaker did more than his fair share when it comes to like Brock. So yes, I think he was fantastic, but the booking was still Undertaker versus Monster of the Week. And the silly stuff he was doing with the Dudley Boys, the never-ending feud with Kane. There are some issues there that probably would do damage to his legacy if you cared about match quality. But in terms of being, a fantastic character that was capable of more than capable of holding his own in the ring, yeah, he was great during the Ruthless Aggression and the Attitude Era. It could have been better, but it wasn't on him as a performer. It was mostly on him being booked against terrible performers. He was being booked against people who were terrible. Here's another one. Who was your favorite hot boy? Mine was BG. Same. I was a big fan of BG. One of the first I was about to say the first hot boy I ever bought, which would be false because I did buy 400 Degrees. I bought it on cassette tape. But after that, one of the first CDs I ever bought, it was probably like the fourth CD I ever bought, was Checkmate by BG. And I remember playing that joint a whole lot. Whole lot. I didn't even get the first tape. I got the CD though. But so it's like a maybe Juvenile, but I think I was a bigger fan of BG. Here's how come, and here's his final question: how come Flair never got as big in popularity as Hogan? Hogan had the platform, brother. Hogan worked for the WWF. He was on national television. He was on NBC. He's a cartoon character brought to life. There's there's so much there for Hulkamania that it's hard to see how Flair was going to eclipse that in popularity. Now he's probably more popular amongst the Wrestling Observer newsletter readers, but he certainly wasn't more popular in the media. Doom, Doctor Doom, says opinion on Tongaloa. I think he's fucking hilarious. Tongaloa is easily one of the most inept, terrible professional wrestlers. And the crazy thing is, it's not like he's just bad right now. It's like he's always been bad. When he was Camacho, he sucked. Like he's just not good. And this is a guy who probably going to Japan all those years didn't help. He just was not good. He's just terrible. He's always been terrible. 1983 Jay Cheat says, who is the best Puerto Rican wrestler in your opinion? Oh, that's an interesting question. It will require for me to have more knowledge about Puerto Rico than I actually have. I could give you some cop out answers. I could say like Pedro Morales, which I probably have seen a grand total of 10, maybe 15 Pedro Morales matches. I can't say that. Other than that, I'll probably have to cop out and say Carlito, but that would be recency bias. Um, because I didn't see Carlito until 2004, 2005 maybe, and I don't think it would be fair to say him. Um, there's not a ton of Puerto Rican wrestlers. I'm talking about on the main stage, not talking about all time. I know they got an entire island with Puerto Rican wrestling history. I'm just not that familiar with it, so I can't give you a direct answer there because it will require for me to do more research into Puerto Rican wrestling, and I don't want to just be like, oh, I heard that Carlos Colon was really good. I'm just gonna say I'm a push on this. I have no idea. The one EB says, you think William Regal fucked it up for everyone? Why Tony won't let nobody leave? You know, it might be it might be William Regal's fault, but I don't think it's William Regal's fault. It might be, but I don't think so. You know, something, especially when you look at what Meltzer said about this whole thing, that if WWE started letting people out of their contracts, then AEW should start letting people out of their contracts. So it's like, is he just being told to hold wrestlers to their contracts because that's what WWE would do? Is he doing this because these wrestlers pissed him off? And this is his way of, I guess you could say, harming their careers? Or, I wouldn't say harming, but slowing their careers down? It could be, but I don't know if it will be William Regal's fault. Because as far as I know, the way it worked is that William Regal just asked him not to pick up that option. And that was it, you know? But to be quite honest, it's the fault of these talent. They were signing 4 or 5 year deals like this is the NFL. Like this is pro wrestling, guy. And if you're not working for WWE, I don't see why you would sign a 5 year contract. I just don't see why you would do it. Who the fuck would sign a 5 year contract at MLW or TNA or something like that? A year or two, that maximum, a year or two max. You know, signing 4 or 5 year deals is crazy. But this the talent's fault. You know, and I think Tony just doesn't want to open the floodgates of letting people go, even though he needs to. I think at the start of the year, new me, new year, new me, new year, new AEW. On January the 1st, he needs to just come out, maybe put out a tweet and say, everybody who wants to leave got 24 hours to put in their notice. Put in your notice. If you want to get out, I will sign it off on January the 3rd. Anybody who hasn't put in their word is staying. And you're staying for the duration of your contract. And that's that. And, that way, you're not firing them, but you're opening the door and you're going to see who's going to leave. And despite the fact that I am often labeled as being, on the side of the companies, the one thing I do not like is when guys are held to these contracts for years and years or months and months and months. Again, I just think it should be 90 days. If the guy hasn't worked in 90 days, he should be a free agent. Now, if he hasn't worked because he doesn't want to work, then you should just sue him and force him to work. But if you're not offering him anything, you're just not calling them or whatever, then you're basically saying you don't need him anymore. I know that if I disappear from my job for 2 or 3 weeks, they're gonna either come looking for me or they're gonna fire me, right? So it should be the same thing in wrestling. You're not injured. Either you should be able to get this guy back onto the show in some way, offer him some kind of work, even if it's just him doing jobs in the middle of the ring, until his contract is over. But have him sitting at home doing nothing just seems unfair. And I think that's just a Tony Khan decision. I don't think it has much to do with William Regal. He's the one EB has another question. Says, what do you think about Drew McIntyre versus John Cena at WrestleMania? It gives Drew something better to do. Well, in comparison to John Cena versus Logan Paul, which was pitched, look, I'm okay with John Cena wrestling Logan Paul, just not at WrestleMania. All right. If he wanted to wrestle Logan Paul at Elimination Chamber, that's fine. Backlash, that's fine. A Crown Jewel, fine. Not at WrestleMania, though. Now, Drew versus Cena at WrestleMania is a huge match. It would be a great match for Drew. I'm just not sure it's the right match for John's last WrestleMania opponent. I just don't think it's the right guy. Again, I think WrestleMania is either going to be, it has to be somebody Cena has history with. I think, if we're being honest, it's got to be Punk. Now, if maybe you want to have Punk be his very last opponent, it could be Cody. That could be fine too, because Cody is kind of your next guy. So if you want to have like a Hogan Rock situation, I know that's blasphemy to some people. But if you want to have a passing of the torch kind of match, then I guess it could be Cody. But I don't think Drew McIntyre is the right opponent. But I certainly think him and Drew should do something during that last year. But I don't think Drew being his final WrestleMania opponent really fits. Top Dog has a bunch of questions, but we'll come back to this. We're going to go into the question here. Easter Sunday says, I think TK got shell-shocked after CM Punk debacle and never recovered. Yeah, and I think the response from everybody surprised the hell out of him. And he was expecting more sympathy than he really got. And I don't think he really earned it, to be quite honest. But when it comes to letting people out of their contracts, well, you see, Punk wanted to get out of his contract before he got fired. And he wasn't going to let Punk go. I think TK had a belief that he could fix things. He could fix, whatever is going on with Ricky Starks or with Miro or whomever. He could fix it. He just needs time. That was kind of a Vince thing too. Just kind of a, no, you're not going to quit. I'm going to give you some time off, and then you're going to go on. You're going to, blow off some steam and then come back to work or whatever. I think he really believes he can fix these things, even though some of these things are beyond repair. But I also think he's just scared. I think he's scared that he feels in his heart that he built a utopia. That AEW was the utopia. It was the place where everybody would want to work. And then it's not. And I don't think he's happy about that. I don't think he's happy about that at all. Bishop Marley says, wasn't Carlos Colon a beast back in the day? That's a Dutch Mantel question. I've seen some very blurry footage of Carlos, and it's almost always him bleeding all over the place. And I'm one of those people. I need to see everything, or at least see a lot of this stuff in context. And I know a lot of the footage from Puerto Rico is ruined and destroyed, and all that kind of stuff. So Bishop Marley says Hulkamania was the byproduct of that. Yeah. Easter Sunday says Tungalo was injured by CM Punk during War Games. He was just coming off an injury. I think he might be done. He needs to be done. He sucks. Vince put all his effort into courting the mainstream appeal. Yeah, that's the difference between Hogan and Flair. Absolutely. And Hogan was such a personality and such a card that he's so much larger than life too. This big, massive red and yellow, he's everywhere. He's on Saturday Night Live, just a human mountain, sweating and, flexing and all this kind of stuff. It was great. Easter Sunday says the WWF was a cultural phenomenon in those times. Most of us only knew Flair by magazine covers until Turner Networks went nationwide. Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it is. Hogan, man, sheesh. There was Hulk Hogan lunch boxes, and he was in movies by the end of the '80s. Unreal. And I'm not talking about Rocky. I'm talking about like they do like No Holds Barred in like the late '80s. Bishop Marley was a big Lil Wayne fan. My boy Young Sturts is his favorite rapper, Lil Wayne. I think he still is, even to this day. And this was 25 some odd years ago. Bo the Killer says Karrion Kross writes a book. I heard that he wrote a book. I think I seen the cover or whatever. Interesting. I wonder what's in it, but I don't want to read it. Easter Sunday says Vince struggled a bit after 2008 with the Benoit incident, which inevitably influenced Vince's booking decisions, including The Undertaker. Yeah, he tried to. Well, he certainly tried to put the toothpaste back in the tube and tried to go back to being PG, which I know pissed a lot of people off. But even though Undertaker had become the dead man again in like 2004, and some of the goofy stuff that he had him doing with Heidenreich and Snitsky and all those guys, like that stuff was before 2008. But I definitely think there was a change. Definitely think there was a change in 2008. It was pretty clear. You said Easter Sunday. Can't speak for Mongo, but I remember once Vince won, interest waned. Plus, by then everyone was online, which changed the industry. I had already stopped watching by the time Vince won the Monday Night Wars. I had already quit. It wasn't even official. Like WWF was very, very far ahead when I stopped watching, but it wasn't official yet that they had won. But I can tell you, once the fad was over, and the fad was over before WCW died. Like it was still wrestling was still kind of popular, but it wasn't nearly as popular as it was a year or two prior. To be real. Top Dog says that besides the Monday Night Wars ending, why do you think the boom period ended in 2001, and why do you think WWE never got a level of mainstream success since? Well, I think the Monday Night Wars actually helped WWE a lot in terms of redefining the promotion, expanding the promotion's reach. But 2001 is different from 97. That's a 5-year difference. You've been doing Crash TV, absurd storylines for 5 years. I think there's a certain level of audience burnout. I think there was less and less Steve Austin. I think The Rock was starting to leave. The company is now trying to push Triple H. They're trying to get him over. There's a lot of little creative. They changed The Undertaker. There's a little things here and there in that 5-year gap between 96 and 2001 that changed. The audience who was like, I was a teenager in 1996, I was 12, so I wasn't a teenager. But it was if you were a teenager in 1996, let's say you were 15, then by 2001 you were what, 20, 21? Your taste changed. Your lifestyle changed. Just like there was a difference between the people who was watching WWE in 1989 and people who was watching 1995. The taste changed. Those people grew up. They don't stay encased in amber forever. Everybody who was a big Ultimate Warrior fan in 1990, either they grew up and grew out by 96, or they were barely holding on by that point in time. It's a 5-year difference. So you always got to take into account that people grow up and your target audience oftentimes will grow up, and they'll grow away from the product. And that's happened to WWE quite a few times. They'll outgrow their product. I mean, they'll outgrow their audience. You know, and there's nothing you can do about that. You can't stop children from growing. You can't stop your teenage audience from growing up. Eventually, they grow up, and you got to start from scratch. You got to start getting them young again. And that's the one thing I think Triple H is going to end up biting him in the ass eventually. Is he took a sort of child-friendly product and he moved it to a more teenage-friendly product, even though it's still PG. And he took all the wacky characters and stuff out. That was all the stuff that was bringing the kids in, you know. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting what's going to take place by 2028 with Triple H and control. You said Remy's success killed his career. Who, Papoose? I don't think so, because Remy was always more successful than Papoose. Papoose was, even though I think he was one of the first rappers to get $1 million contract, he might have been the second. Because I think 50 Cent got one first. But Papoose got $1 million record deal a couple of years after he got on. And then he sold a grand total of 0 fucking albums. His career was already dead. All right? It was already over. Remy, at the very least, was known for her stuff with the Terror Squad. Right? Like, she was known for doing like guest verses on like Annie Up and some of the stuff she did with Big Pun. She had already had a solo record. Papoose? No. No. Remy was already more successful than Papoose, and it had nothing to do with that. That was before they even hooked up. Easter Sunday says, check out Bobby the Brain Heenan on the mat title match. Bubba Ray has some burners online. I've been wanting to watch the Bobby Heenan one. Maybe I will. Top Dog, Merry Christmas. Easter Sunday says, I've spent most of my Christmases alone. The worst might have been Baghdad in 2005. Oh yeah, I would imagine that was the shits. I would imagine that would have been the shits. Surrounded by a bunch of goddamn Muslims who probably don't even celebrate Christmas. Oh hell no. Sheesh. Ain't nothing wrong with Muslims. They just don't celebrate Christmas. So I know you probably like you and a couple other guys were there celebrating Christmas, and everybody else is looking like, oh, what the fuck are y'all doing? Dennis King says people make it seem like everything in the Attitude Era was good, but it wasn't. It was actually worse. Not only was it not good, a lot of that stuff was terrible. Like straight god awful. And it is what it is. But it just takes for people to tell you the truth. Easter Sunday says I didn't feel the end of the Attitude Era. It just kind of happened. I think the Attitude Era, people always try to find when it actually ended, just like they try to always find when it actually began. I think Stone Cold Steve Austin is the great bookend for the Attitude Era. Even though I think 96, they do the King of the Ring. He cuts that promo. It doesn't turn into an immediate push. So maybe 97 is the beginning of the Attitude Era. When Stone Cold Steve Austin wins the Royal Rumble. You could probably say right there. But that came off, of course, him winning the King of the Ring. And some of the promos and stuff that he did with Bret Hart. But he wasn't doing anything for months. So, it would have been a lie to say it starts at King of the Ring. Because it doesn't. But 97 is when a lot of things changed. Austin was getting his big push, and the crowd had turned on Shawn. So, and now the crowd is also turning on Bret. So, early 97. Now there was some of that stuff in 96 with the crowd turning on, but not early 96, late 96, where guys were starting to not get the fan reactions that they should have. And you started seeing some of the gray stuff that they like to ring in. Diesel was one of the first guys to really do that in terms of he hadn't fully turned heel when he started his feud with Undertaker. Of course, by the time they really got into it, he was full blown heel, but he hadn't quite turned yet. And this was in March of '96. Of course, he would be in WCW by the end of the year. But when you look at Steve Austin from June, when he won the King of the Ring, he fiddle fucked around for I don't know 5 months before he finally hit pay dirt with Brett. But '97 is when things started to really change. Shawn won the title again, but it was in his hometown. He really didn't sell too many tickets. Now things have got to change. You know, they're about to turn Brett heel, so you're about to have a year of Brett as a heel. Steve Austin is about to get this nice little run as a tweener here, which I'm not a big fan of, but they did it successfully. And the product is about to take a harder edge, you know. And by the end of '97, you could say the Attitude Era was pretty much in its embryonic stage. But so if you want to say it's like a human kind of thing, it's like the WWF got pregnant in early '97. You know, the baby was born by the end of '97 and was in its embryonic stage. It was kind of a toddler in '98. You know, as the Mr. McMahon stuff is about to happen. That's basically like the toddler stage of the Attitude Era because they're playing around with it. By the time Steve Austin challenges Vince McMahon to a match, it's still not full maturity, but you got yourself a walking, talking kid right there. You know, this thing has completely turned from whatever it was a year or two prior. And then at the end, I would say WCW died, which is important. ECW is dead, which is also important. But also, Stone Cold Steve Austin shook hands with Vince McMahon at the end of WrestleMania. And for a lot of people, that was kind of like what? Now, again, 2000, there was not a lot of Steve Austin in 2000. So that's like being on your deathbed. You've had the heart attack already, which is Steve Austin breaking his neck. But now you're having all these complications from the injuries. He's in, he's out. You know, he's drinking too much. Maybe he's taking too many pills or whatever the case may be. So he's out, he's in. Who knows? And in 2001, they figured he was stale. He was going to freshen him up, and they ruined everything. So there that goes. WG Phil says RBD is only 5 years younger than Shawn. I knew they was pretty close in age. I didn't know they was that close. But they're basically peers at that point. So it's not like Rob Van Dam was watching Shawn Michaels on TV. You know, like they could not have gone to high school together, but they could have. They would be familiar with each other. You know, if they lived in the same neighborhood. Easter Sunday said that conversation in no way addresses WCW's Nitro, which exposed lucha libre wrestling to American audiences in a way that had never been seen before. That is true, but the luchadors, I think they were positioned as being lower card guys. They were never positioned as being top guys. And I think that's an important piece in what he was trying to say is that the Young Bucks found and adopted a way of being small, working that style, and still being successful. And I'm not talking about like you're just on TV because they could have did that in TNA. I'm talking about being main event guys. Like as great as Rey Mysterio and Psychosis and Juventud Guerrera and all those guys were, they were in the opening match. They were in the third match. Fucking Ultimo Dragons like lost in the TV title division, not doing anything spectacular. If those guys were on top, then I would say, yeah, you could probably say, well, shit, it was Ray. You know, like Ray did it. But they were kind of like in the mid card, you know, and mid carders do all kinds of things that are sometimes impactful, other times not so much. But I think the WCW Lucha Libre style, and of course, it made a lot more sense than what the Young Bucks were doing. It made a hell of a lot more sense. But when you had some of the other guys, it was completely different. I'm thinking about it in terms of in the level of exposure and success. While in '96 or '95, you did get the luchadors getting more exposed, even though technically, like the Great Muta was doing that kind of stuff. It was on Turner before the luchadors came in. He was doing moonsaults and handsprings and all that kind of. He wasn't doing like handsprings over ropes or anything like that, but he was doing handsprings and things like that. And Liger had wrestled on Nitro, and Liger had wrestled on WCW like in the early 2000s, but he didn't really crack and break through and become like a big star. And I think that was very important to getting people who wanted to mimic that, is having a certain level of success. All right, so let's get back into the pit. As the top dog has 4 questions. He says, one, thoughts on Goldberg in 1998. Okay, so are you asking me as a kid who was 14 in 1998 what I thought of Bill Goldberg? Which is I didn't like him. Because at the time I was kind of a work rate guy, kind of. And Goldberg's matches were not long. But you ask me today, I love Goldberg. I was just talking about how awesome his match was with Reese. Oh, the big dude from the flock. They showed a clip. Somebody had a clip of that match on social media. That shit ruled. Like, like it did. Like you look back when you started looking at wrestling for different things, you realize that how diverse of an art form it is. And you realize Goldberg is not Chris Jericho. Like he don't have to sell everything. He can take a suplex and get up. Who cares? Like the Road Warriors who do that shit all the time. They get thrown and they just get right back up. And people would just be like, oh shit, Sting would do it. When you big and you jacked like that, you can pull a Ultimate Warrior or a Hulk Hogan. Nobody cares if you don't sell it. People only care when you tiny and you get dropped on your head from a far height. Like if you're a big jack dude, they'll be like, okay, you got choke slammed and you got right back up. Okay. That's just badass. Like that's the difference between, a badass and a twerk. Ricochet can do a 630 through a table. I don't be thinking to myself, like, these dudes are very tiny. What they're doing is stupid. But Goldberg in '98, I think he got hit in the head with a stop sign. He just kind of plowed through it. Oh my god damn. That's badass. So looking back on it, I loved Goldberg in '98. But when I was living through it, I was not a fan. I didn't like it at all. Mainly because I knew he was going to win. I didn't really recognize how well booked those matches were in those segments and everything. Looking back on it, I can actually take in what Kevin Sullivan was trying to do and the image he was building with Bill Goldberg. So I really appreciate it a lot more. His next question is, what era do you think was bigger than the Attitude Era or the Golden Era? I mean, comparing the two. Well, for me, it would always be the '80s. I love the '80s. From top to bottom, they had the best roster. From top to bottom, they had the best storylines. From top to bottom, they had they did the most impactful stuff that wrestling fans will remember was in the golden age. You know, Jake the Snake Roberts, Roddy Piper. These guys didn't need belts. They didn't need belts. They could go out there and do a talking segment and draw and be over. You know, and then you had some really the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation and the Killer Bees to a lesser extent, and of course Demolition in the later part of the '80s, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You know, it's just so many guys. Just such a crisp roster. So much talent. And they were involved with so many high level feuds. I mean, Ricky Steamboat was world champion in WCW. Nobody gives a shit. But they remember when he got DDT'd on the floor on Saturday Night's main event, you know? Everybody remembers when he got his throat crushed by Randy Savage. Nobody remembers when he won the world title in WCW. When I was a kid, I didn't even know he won the world title in WCW. Because it never came up. There was never an opportunity to even talk about it. Even though I know he won the world title when he went back. It still never came up because I was still watching wrestling in 94. And when he came back in 91, I was still watching it. It never comes up. That's how important with the stuff they were doing, the storylines and the booking of that era. That a guy could go his entire career and never become the world champion. He could gripe about it on podcasts 30 years later. You know, like Jake Roberts did. But he didn't need it. It's really strange. Jake Roberts never won a title, period, in WWF. He never won anything. In fact, Jake Roberts pretty much lost every major feud he was in and ended up becoming a legend. And you remember so many things that he did. Never won shit in the way of championships. He rarely even challenged for them, to be quite honest. I know that Hogan put an embargo on him, but he didn't even become the Intercontinental Champion, which would have been perfect for him. Piper didn't want to do no job, so he certainly wasn't going to win no belts. But these guys didn't need him. They didn't need him. So that's a rare thing for you to be like. That's how Undertaker was in the mid '90s. Like he had won the world title in '92, but between '92 and '97, he didn't win anything. You know, he never won shit. But he was always involved. Now he was involved with bullshit, but he was always involved. You know, he was wrestling Giant Gonzalez. He was wrestling Mabel, but he was always involved. You know, that would be like an excellent career. So like to not. That's why I don't be. That's why I be like, you know, when they be talking about like Asuka being misused, it's like, what are you talking about? Asuka has been a champion every single year she's been on the roster. Every year, and she didn't even need to be a champion. Half the time she was a champion. It was just doing it, you know. Like you don't need to be a champion; you just need to be prominently featured. And those guys were prominently featured without titles. They could have main evented shows without Hogan, and they did. Like the B team would go around and main event shows. No Hogan. That's how powerful that machine was. And I know that eventually they became, you know, powerful enough that they didn't need Austin. They still had The Rock there. You know, and The Rock was still like the number 2 most over wrestler in the entire business. So it was different. His third question: best Bruno Sammartino matches and feuds, and where do you rank him all time when it comes to drawing power? It's interesting because my favorite Bruno matches are his matches with Stan Hansen, especially their cage match after Bruno broke his neck, and that's probably the most memorable Bruno feud is when he broke his neck. Stan Hansen broke his neck, and I think he broke his neck with a body slam. It's a massive draw. I would have to do like some real deep research into where you would put him all time in terms of drawing power. Um, because he sold out Madison Square Garden an obscene amount of times. Just it was over like 2,000, I think. It was ridiculous. I think he may have sold that building out way more than Hogan because he probably ran it more than Hogan. And so it's hard to say from that perspective. But best Bruno matches, he has some really good matches with Stan Hansen. His matches with Superstar Billy Graham was actually not bad either. They weren't great because Superstar Billy Graham is not the best, but they were fun matches because Superstar knew how to work. He didn't know how to do moves. He knew how to work. He knew how to get heat and build heat and everything. So that stuff was fun. I think I've seen clips of Bruno's matches with Gorilla Monsoon. I don't think I've seen the whole match. Have I seen the whole match? I don't think so. I don't think I've seen the whole match. But the Stan Hansen stuff should be easy to find. And so you should be able to easily find Stan Hansen and Bruno in a cage and match rules. Top Dog says, when do you think Andre the Giant was at his peak? It was probably in the 70s. That's when he was actually selling for people. He wasn't always taking bumps, but he actually sold things. When he got older and he was very heavy, I don't think that really did a great job of getting over how talented Andre was. Like when he was getting body slammed by guys like Harley Race, he had to help them. Like these guys weren't just snatching them up and slamming them. But I think the 70s, late 70s, early 80s was probably peak Andre. And I think mid 80s, of course, he started to slow down. That's when he got real heavy. So probably like 70s. Dr. Doom 3 has 2 questions. He says, 1, who would you say was the coolest wrestler you've ever seen? I say Scott Hall. Rewatching old shows, man, the NWO relied heavy on him for their cool factor. Hall is hard to root against for that very reason. He just had swag. Whether he was Razor Ramon or Scott Hall in WCW, he was so charismatic that he caught everybody's attention. Mr. Perfect is another one I think was incredibly cool. I think I might have to go with you. Steve Austin was very cool too. I wasn't a huge fan of Steve Austin, but I acknowledge the cool factor of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I also acknowledge the cool factor of The Rock. Also acknowledge the cool factor of The Undertaker and The Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage, who I think might have been the coolest. There's quite a few. Flair was very cool. Sting was cool. But I think when you look at overall, I think the only one who can give Scott a full run for his money is Randy Savage. Because Savage, he looked the part, he walked the part, he talked. He was so creative in how he spoke and how he dressed. And he seemed to be on all the time, no matter where you saw him. He always looked like the Macho Man. like it was great. So I think Scott Hall and Randy Savage are probably at 1A and 1B on like being the coolest wrestlers I've ever seen. His second question is, what do you think of Dave Meltzer saying AEW needs a dominant babyface, top guy, Hogan Cena-esque? You know what? I was shocked to see that question. I was shocked. I thought it was bullshit when I saw it because I was like, wait a second, he didn't say that. I actually went to his account and it is there. It's a real tweet. He says, rewatching some old shows, I'm surprised by how often Cena got cheered considering how polarizing he was. It seemed he mostly got booed in specific cities or against certain opponents. He got cheered against Jeff Hardy in 2008. Well, when they went to smart cities, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, he always got booed out of the building every single time. If they went to more traditionally marked cities, Cena usually got the biggest cheers of the night. Easily, without question. He would get the biggest reaction, period. But in smart cities, he almost always got booed out of the building. But to answer your question, what I think of Meltzer saying that AEW needs a top baby face, he just wants it to be Will Ospreay. That's that's all he wants. But I do think you need to have a signature performer. That's the one thing about every wrestling territory except AEW is they all had a signature guy, a top guy. He's either a top heel or the top baby face. Usually in the NWA territories, it was a top heel. But a signature baby face that people truly believe in, and they will come see him fight, even if it's not for a title. They just want to see him beat up somebody, you know? And I do think AEW needs that. And for a lot of AEW fans, they see that as Hangman Page. They see him as being the Cena, the franchise player for AEW. I'm thinking Meltzer sees that as Will Ospreay. You know, I think that the AEW fans are probably closer to the mark. If you made me choose, I probably would choose Will Hangman Page. And I hate Hangman Page, and everybody knows this. But in terms of being a franchise player, I probably would go with Hangman because the audience already accepts him as that role. And they accept him in that role more than they accept Will Ospreay in that role. But I actually agree. I think they do need a dominant baby face. They need stronger baby faces. But what they need is for somebody who knows talent to actually say, these guys have the potential to be your franchise players. And these are the guys that when we put them out there, the crowd knows business is about to pick up and he's going over. Maybe not 99% of the time, but a good 80% of the time he's going over. And then they're going to go with it. Now, the thing is, their audience is going to regurgitate that, right? Their audience hates that shit. So it's not going to work. And that's why Tony Khan won't do it. But smart money would say you would take somebody, and you got a couple of options. I think Hangman is probably the best option you got, especially right now, because he's already got the momentum. Swerve is probably another one that you could probably get away with doing this with. And he just comes out and he kicks somebody's ass. He wins matches. And then eventually he's going to be the hero that saves the day. Like you don't need a superhero. You don't need a Cena or a Hogan, a moral center, because AEW is not that kind of company. They need a signature performer. They need an AJ Styles. That's what they need, a Sting. They need somebody who is the signature performer, somebody who's probably never going to leave. And that's why I say it probably needs to be Hangman, right? He's never going to leave. And I don't think it could be Kenny Omega. He's too old. He's almost 40. He had who knows how much of his guts removed. And even though the audience loves him, I think Kenny Omega's, I'm just going to go on record saying I think he's washed. Maybe he performs great against this guy. He's going to wrestle in New Japan. Who knows? But I don't think it can be Kenny Omega. So I'm thinking it's probably going to have to be Hangman Page or Swerve. But I definitely think they need a signature performer. They need somebody, preferably, and that's another thing with Hangman is he's homegrown. He never got pushed anywhere else. So that would be a great one. He could be like their AJ Styles. I don't think it would be fair to say Hogan. But even when TNA was misusing AJ Styles, he was still their signature performer. And even though, Hangman Page, I think he's kind of, effeminate and weird, he's the signature performer for AEW. He's their guy. He's the guy that the audience wants. They're turning them babyface on their own. So, but I agree. I think they need a dominant babyface, somebody that people believe in. They have so many heels. the heels suck too. It's MJF and Moxley and his cadre of weirdos. I mean, Lashley and them is the only really good heels on the fucking show. And what's the name? Don Callis. But even Don Callis has been nerfed quite a bit because they're trying to get Cal Fletcher over. But yeah, they definitely need a signature babyface. Number 3, why do you think this era of wrestlers is full of role players instead of more ambitious guys? He says, I remember Vince mentioned this in 2014. I think it's a lot of the "this is my dream" kind of guys. There's a lot of them on the roster now. There's a lot of "this is my dream, I'm just happy to be here." You know, that's what I'm thinking. All these guys who grew up just wanting to be on the show, be a part of the show. They didn't really care if they were the main event. Don't really care if they're in the mid card. They would like to be, main event WrestleMania top guy, but they're okay if they're not. I think it's definitely a change in personality from the 80s and the 90s where guys jostled for position and they're politicking. And there's this whole thing on the internet now about who's politicking the main event WrestleMania. And they're like, okay, we're power scaling the politicking of guys because Vince is not there anymore. So we're gonna we're gonna power scale. Like The Rock has the most authority. He's gonna do whatever he wants. He's not listening to Triple H. So clearly he's got all the authority. He's just gonna go to Ari Emanuel with anything he wants to do. Then you got Roman. Then you got Seth. Then you got Punk. Then you got Gunther. Gunther is the newest of the bunch. He's gonna do probably whatever he's told, which is I think he needs to get a solid opponent, but he's not gonna get none of the bigger guys. I pitch that Gunther should probably work with AJ Styles. If you can get AJ in the ring, that would be great. But all of the mega matches are pretty much going to be spoken for. Punk ain't wrestling. I mean, if Punk wrestles Gunther, I'd be surprised. If Punk don't end up with Cena or uh, Rollins or Roman, I'd be surprised. But I believe that Punk is going to get his WrestleMania main event in 2025. But I think a lot of it is these guys are just happy to be there. A lot of them, and that kind of answers the question. A lot of them are just happy to be there. They don't really have too much in the way of being cutthroat. Black Sand 97. He has 3 questions. He says, 1, what's your thoughts on the new Superman movie? Okay, I saw the trailer. I think I talked about this, but I didn't feel the need for all the other characters, Mr. Terrific and Hawk Girl and Guy Gardner. I didn't need any of those characters. I don't know what James Gunn is trying to do. I don't think we needed all those characters in the Superman movie. Like I don't think Superman is the platform to launch your Guy Gardner project. Like I don't think so. Nah, Mr. Terrific. Mm-mm. So, without seeing it, it's hard for me to judge it too much. Like the trailer is like 2 minutes. Um, maybe when the longer trailers come out, I have more of an opinion. I want to see the villains and everything. But as of right now, my interest level is near 0 because I see that they're loading it up with a bunch of other horse shit. Black Sandy says, what's the most underrated anime manga that deserves more attention? That's an interesting question because it assumes I read a lot of manga, and I don't. I don't read that much. Let's see. I'm a big fan of candy and cigarettes. Um, I think that is like if you liked Hit Girl from Kick Ass, it's kind of like that. It's like a young female assassin. Japan is very weird, so it's not like she's sexualized, but there's a little too many panels with her in her underwear. It's not sexual. Well, it's like she sleeps in her underwear or whatever. but it's really weird. But the story is actually pretty cool. It's about an old guy who he's a police officer, and he has to make money because his grandson has some uncurable illness, and he's trying to find some cure for his grandson or some special medication. He need money. He's retired, so he starts becoming like an assassin, like a trained killer. And he's teamed up with this little girl, and she's like 11 or 12 or something like that. But she's incredibly violent, incredibly vicious, good with a pistol, good with a knife, whole 9 yards. But she's still like a normal kid. Again, much like Hit Girl from the Kick-Ass franchise. I think there was I don't see anybody talk about candy and cigarettes. So maybe I would say candy and cigarettes is a good one that probably could use a lot more attention. I wish people spoke about Fist of the North Star more, than they usually do. And not a lot of people discuss it. Sakamoto Days going on right now, I think is another one. I'm not sure if the anime's even started yet. I heard there will be one, but I don't think it started yet. I don't know. But I think those would be 2 or 3 right there. Third, he says, what movie is better, Ghost in the Shell or Akira? Oh, this is a tough one. Of these 2, the first one I saw was Ghost in the Shell. Okay? Because Ghost in the Shell, I think, was the second anime I'd ever seen after Ninja Scroll. And Ninja Scroll blew my goddamn mind. All right. So, if you're asking me which one is the better one, I would prefer Ghost in the Shell. It's a little. I think the action is better. I think the animation is a little bit better. The story is interesting. It's about artificial life, and while Akira is incredibly fun, the Tetsuo, you know, I like Akira though, man. I really do. I need to probably watch it this weekend actually. But when it comes to revisiting, I love watching Ghost in the Shell, and I'll go back to watch Ghost in the Shell all the time. I keep that in my rotation. I've probably seen Ghost in the Shell. The only movie I think I've seen more or as many times as Ghost in the Shell is probably Princess Mononoke. And I ended up seeing that on TV. That was the first time I ever saw that on TV. I remember when I got a taped version of that movie. Blew my mind. It wasn't on the same level as Ghost in the Shell and Akira though. But I love Princess Mononoke, and I've seen that movie a bunch of times. But I'm gonna go with Ghost in the Shell. Real X9 says, if Candy LaRue and Johnny Saneface weren't wrestlers, what do you think their 9 to 5 be? Interesting. They probably would make really good librarians. Or they work like at an internet cafe. I could definitely see Candice LeRae making very special cappuccinos with chocolate and foam and all kinds of stuff. And Johnny Gargano wearing problem glasses and telling you about climate change and all that other horse shit. Dylan O'Berry says, underrated, but take Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. Should have main event at night 1 of WrestleMania 37. I think walking into that show, you kind of had a feeling that McIntyre wasn't going to win. That's why they opened the show. If I remember correctly, they opened it, actually. It would have been nice if Bobby Lashley could have got a WrestleMania main event on his resume, but it was not to be. It's unfortunate. It was not to be. Let's go to you guys who are alive now. Prince Ali, your questions are actually next. So once I get done with this, I'm actually going to answer your questions next. Top Dog says, bigger backstage politician in their prime, Hogan or Cena? Well, clearly Hogan. Cena has always downplayed the amount of politicking he does He basically just said, "I just do what they tell me to do." I'm like, you have no opinion on what you do. Get out of here. Top Dog says, "Do you think Cody Rhodes is a true Cena Hogan like top face?" He wants to be, but I don't think he is. It would take more time. I think Cody Rhodes has been a face since he came back, and he came back at 38, and he's still a top face. He's still drawing. He's not drawing as much as he was because he's not feuding with Roman Reigns anymore. But um, it's if he manages to make it through WrestleMania without getting booed in, probably. But I think he's probably gonna get booed before May of next year. People are gonna be booing him. AJ3 says, "What exactly is a draw in today's era of pro wrestling?" Remember my comment about Will Ospreay and Jeff Jarrett? Yeah, but I didn't understand your comment about Will Ospreay and Jeff Jarrett, so I didn't know. But you say like, what's the draw? I mean, you sell tickets. People want to see what you do on television. You sell merchandise. Um, that's how you realize like who's a draw. Like, are people watching your videos on YouTube? Are people following you on social media? Those kinds of things. But drawing is about making money. So that the revenue streams will tell you whether people are drawn or not, and whether you sell merchandise, tickets, etc. is probably the best way to look at things. Dennis King said those videos of Hansen in Japan are crazy. Hansen versus Funk, love it. Oh yeah, Hansen was nuts in Japan. He was crazy. Uh, I like to watch like random Stan Hansen matches every once in a while. Reminds me of what wrestling should be. I just hate that he wrestled in Japan so much because it just means that he wrestled a bunch of Japanese guys who I have no interest in watching. Some of them are good, but most of them I just have no interest in watching. Top Dog says the mid Carters in the Attitude Era was also over though. The Godfather and Too Cool was over like Rover. Yeah, they were gimmicks though. They were really good gimmicks. They got a lot of reaction. But ask people what was your favorite Too Cool segment? Oh, that time they danced. Okay, which time did they dance? At least with the Godfather, it was over like here comes the whole train. Okay, what was your favorite Godfather segment? Well, when he tried to ask Undertaker, I know you love some hoes. That's probably my favorite one. That's the one most people would think of if you were to question them. But just because they were over doesn't mean they were memorable. So we're talking about Coco Beware status here. Everybody remembers Coco Beware. What do you remember about Coco Beware though? And what did he do? Did he have any classic matches? No. Classic segments? No. He was Owen Hart's tag team partner for a short while. And high energy. I always thought when he did that, this would be so funny. Dennis King says in the 80s, a lot of the stars were so over they didn't need a belt. Yeah, and that's really how wrestling should be. It should be a bunch of guys who are so over they don't need titles. Personal feuds draw money. Dennis King says one thing about wrestling in the 80s, it was still regional. In the South, NWA was popular, not outside though. Well, the NWA was, got to understand, before it became essentially just Jim Crockett Promotions, there was also NWA territories in Detroit and like the Midwest. But yeah, the WWF, once it started to branch out, it took over, and the NWA really couldn't do too much. X9 says only one question: are you ready for fun, pal? I don't know, maybe. AG3 says, speaking of Big Pawn, did you know his son was a rapper and he was blackballed by Fat Joe? I heard that his son was a rapper. I've actually heard his son rap. Um, I don't remember what his name is. What I know it wasn't like Baby Pun, but he tried to rap like Pun, and that kind of was off-putting. That was kind of off-putting, but I didn't know his son got blackballed by Fat Joe. I wonder why. Top Dog says, do you think Vince McMahon did the right thing going in with Cena as the guy back in 2005? I think if you look back on it, absolutely. What did Cena get caught up in? Nothing. Nothing. Cena didn't get busted on steroids. Cena didn't get a domestic violence issue. Cena didn't get busted, cheating on his wife or anything like that. He didn't get a DUI. Cena is seen mostly as a saint-like figure to people. Like Cena does nothing wrong, and it wasn't until he was right on the edge of retirement that people started being like, "Oh shit, he did the stuff with China," and when he took a kind of kicked Taiwan a little bit. He does little things here and there, wearing the dress, but throughout that time, that run, Cena was unproblematic as possible. He was just the absolute best Boy Scout in the world. That's what the WWF needed in an era where guys were getting DUIs, guys were killing their wives and kids, and getting busted for steroids, and even the owner himself was getting busted, with whores and all this kind of stuff. And Cena is just like, the worst thing is, he didn't marry the girl that he said he wanted to marry. He he said he he asked the chick to marry him, and he didn't actually marry her. Like that was like the worst thing he did during his entire time. He got away. He didn't do anything. The saying says, "I'm watching Raw from 2008." Well, good luck with that. Hot shot booking hurt. Oh, it always does. Big Show versus Undertaker and Russo's Aggression Era 2 with Vicky involved. Ugh, I want to puke. M Studio says, do you prefer Drew McIntyre as a babyface character in the Vince era or him as a heel in the Triple H era? Well, you can tell that Vince wanted Drew to be the conquering babyface, maybe be the counterpoint to Roman Reigns as a really strong heel. That McIntyre was going to be a very strong babyface, but then something happened in 2020 where Drew got really boring. And he started doing Scottish history lessons, and I was like, I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that. Um, Now, do I prefer that to what he's doing now? I certainly prefer. I probably would say what he's doing now, even though I don't really like it. Like the character is fine, but he looks like a massive mountain of muscle. And to think that he is reduced to trolling on Twitter is that's weird. Now the stuff that he was doing with CM Punk was great. Like that stuff was great. And if he can get back in that groove, then I probably would say this guy, you know. But I didn't have a problem with Drew McIntyre when he was being pushed as a super baby face. The only problem is he was booked way too strong. Like, I mean, I remember that time he beat up like Zelina Vega's entire clique by herself. It was like 3 or 4 of them, wasn't it? And he beat up everybody by himself. That was so Cena-ish. Like he was just steamrolling these guys. But this is the guy who beat Brock Lesnar in 5 minutes. So of course, he's not gonna have too much drama beating up a couple of small Latinos, but that kind of set him up for everybody's gonna hate his guts because he's being booked so strongly. But I mean, it is what it is. I think that it fit his character to be booked that way. It fit his look anyway. But there's nothing wrong with what he is right now. Top Dog says Hulk Hogan also had his own cartoon in the mid '80s. Yep, Hogan was everywhere. He had movies, he had cartoons, he was on Saturday Night Live. He was the star of Saturday Night's main event of WrestleMania, the main reason people watched wrestling, action figures, video games, all the whole 9 yards. Hard to argue with Hogan. WG Field says, I don't think Cody versus Cena should be passing the torch since Cody planning on retiring at 40. Well, if he's going to retire at 40, he's got 2 or 3 more years. Cody ain't no spring chicken. So I don't I don't think so. I think for now. Look, Cody has some pretty good. We talk about politicking power levels. Cody has some pretty strong power. It ain't quite Roman. It ain't quite Rock. And those guys are going to sort themselves out. But if Cody can get in the back door and get Cena, I think he should. I think it should happen. You know, and Cody is master politician. He started pitching the match with Cena when Cena came back. As soon as Cena came back, Cody was like, "I got to get that match, brother. Let me get that match, brother." So, but I don't think he's going to retire at 40 because he's almost 40 as is. You know, he's like 38 or something like that right now. And plus, I think Roman's probably going to end up retiring before Cody does. I think Roman's like a foot and a half out of the business as it is at this point. I don't really see what more is there for him to do, and he does come across as bored a little bit, being honest. All right, Prince Ali has a couple of questions here. Who has hotter females, DC or Marvel? Ooh, this is an interesting question. Who has hotter females, DC or Marvel? I want to say Marvel because of Elektra, Scarlet Witch, you know, Black Widow, Madame Mask, even though you can't see her face. But then again, when you look at DC, you got Black Canary. You got who's like she's actually one of my favorite DC characters, Black Widow. Not Black Widow. I'm sorry, Black Canary. I like Black Widow too. You know, for Marvel. I don't have a lot of Black Widow comics though. I mostly just read her as a add-on to either Daredevil or Hawkeye. But Black Canary, I got one of the first trades of Birds of Prey, not the recent series, like the series from the 90s. And I like reading about Black Canary and Green Arrow books. Catwoman, of course, is incredible. And then you got Black Cat and Marvel. So I probably would say Marvel. I probably would say Marvel has hotter chicks. Second question. You could adopt one storyline from the past, the Attitude Era versus Aggression Golden Age, but with modern superstars. What could it be? Ah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like this question because it's tough. It's a tough question. There's things that you could do back then that you can't get away with now. And my mind almost immediately went to some of the more outrageous storylines that they did, like Savage getting bit by a snake, but it wouldn't fit because there's no snake handlers in WWE right now, you know? Or Randy Savage crushing Ricky Steamboat's throat with the ring bell, which you could pretty much see on every other week. I mean, a guy just got his jaw smashed last week on NXT, so that's nothing special about that. So maybe I would say, this is a tough one because I'm thinking it would probably be. I think Attitude Era storylines might actually fit more here, and it would be something along the lines of who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it would be with a modern wrestler, you know, or you could do. But they've done a bunch of corporate champions, so I don't know if that's the best thing to go with is like a bunch of corporate champions. Um, hmm. This is a really tough one. So I would probably go with like $1 Million Man character can't even work today because the race angle is what helped that thing get over, and you can't get away with that today. Mm. And I think a lot of wrestlers will be too scared to do like a money bags kind of gimmick. Even though I know Cameron Grimes did it, but he didn't really do anything with the money. He just kind of had it. Man, so there's some good ones. There's some really good ones. I'm gonna put some thought into this. Maybe somebody should puke up some pea soup like the Ultimate Warrior did when he threw up with Papa Shango put a hex on it. Oh, that was such Vince McMahon shit. I love that. Um, I can't think of one. I can't think of one where modern wrestlers would actually fit. I can't think of one where a modern wrestler would actually fit. Third, what piece of media that's insanely popular with people that you don't get why it is? Lord of the Rings. I don't get it. I don't get Lord of the Rings. I really don't like Middle Earth. Like I've tried watching it. It's boring. I find it to be really boring. Uh, I probably didn't give Harry Potter a full chance, but Lord of the Rings is one of those things that I tried it, man. I can't. I don't get it. I don't get Lord of the Rings. Um, I didn't really get The Wire either, if we're being honest. Like I watched maybe the first season of The Wire, and I just never went back to it. Maybe. Did I watch the whole first season or just like a couple of episodes? It's hard to say. But I watched quite a bit of The Wire, and I was like, not really my thing. Um, it's probably some more like Sons of Anarchy. I didn't really like Sons of Anarchy, and you can probably guess why. All the morally gray characters. I just didn't get it. You know, my girlfriend loves Sons of Anarchy though. She loved that show. Used to watch it every week and try to get me to watch it. I watched the series finale with her though. We watched that. So I went into the last episode of Sons of Anarchy having watched probably a grand total of 30 minutes of it beforehand. Um, his last questions: how do you write a nihilistic character? And how do you write an optimistic character that presents a good point about optimism and nihilism, but also presents flaws in their worldview? All right, so first you have to fully define what these words. Nihilism basically means nothing matters. A character that really doesn't see the point of anything. So you can always use a nihilistic character to pull other characters who care so much about something to kind of nullify it. To teach them that what you're going through, what you're suffering about doesn't really matter anyway. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of being depressed? Like, depressed for what? You're gonna, the world's gonna keep turning without you. What's the point of being upset or angry about anything? What's the point of feeling, of emotion? What's the point? And optimism is the opposite. It is the hope that tomorrow is always going to be better than today. And the bad thing about optimism is sometimes it's very naive. Nihilism can be very mean spirited, very cold. And optimism you can be very naive. Um, Goku is a good optimistic character, but probably one of the best uh, pieces of optimistic flaw is the Cell games where Goku gives up and then turns to fight over to Gohan because he fully believes that Gohan can do it. But he miscalculates who Gohan is, his experience level, and whether Gohan actually wants to do that or not, And you realize, and he realizes it too, they're not the same person, you know? And his optimism is kind of shaken a little bit, even though his faith is rewarded. Like he ended up being right in the end. Gohan got his ass beat. like while Goku was trying to figure it out. So there's a lot of things about optimism because optimists are often quite sure that things are going to be better, and because they're certain, they are sometimes can be a little bit utopian, and nihilists sometimes will be neglectful because they don't really see the point of exerting so much energy, of putting forth so much effort. They can be apathetic sometimes. So what you want to write, if you want to write a nihilistic character, you want to find a character that, doesn't really see the purpose of life, living, relationships, that struggles with that and or preaches that or is trying to teach that. I'm struggling to come up with a good nihilistic character that would that would that would pique the interest because most of the sort of genocidal characters, Apocalypse or Zamasu or something like that, they're not really nihilistic. You know, they believe that what they're doing is for the better. So in some ways, they're optimistic that upon the destruction of mortals or humans, that they can create a better world. That's an optimistic view. It's an utopian view. So if you like, you wanna write an interesting, optimistic character, watch the X-Men, the animated series, or just look at the clips of Apocalypse. It's not bright and cheerful what he's talking about. Like I'm gonna purge the earth of these benighted humans. You're like, whoa, he's gonna kill everybody? Well, he want to create a new world and fire and blood. So yeah, you got to kill all the humans first. Like, oh shit, he's crazy. But he's pretty sure he can do it. You know, he's certain it'll work. So then the M Studios says, you got two questions. Says, do you think the term justified heel sounds like a contradiction? Because if a villain's actions are justified, doesn't that make them the babyface of some sort? I hear the term justified heels a lot in the IWC as of late. No, just because you can justify somebody's behavior doesn't mean their behavior is good. Nope. Somebody can have a good reason why they did a bad thing. It's still a bad thing that they did. Just got to have morals in order to call it out. The problem here is that too many people are soaked in sympathy. They think that if they understand something, that they have to excuse it when they don't. So you can have 100% justifications why you do something. Doesn't mean you should have done it. Doesn't mean you're a good guy for doing it. If you catch your wife in bed with another man and you shoot her and him, people will say, "Well, I can understand why you did that. You're still gonna go to prison, but I can understand why you did it." No, you're not a baby face at that point. You're not a good guy. I think what happens is people have conflated the idea that I understand with it's good. It's not. I can understand 100 different fucking things. They don't mean it's good. You can condemn things that you understand. You can condemn things that you can rationalize. And I said this, and I think in the video, if you lived in Nazi Germany and your life sucked, and some guy told you that it's the tiny hats that's doing all of this, and he's probably going to doctor up some images and doctor up some statistics and prove to you that everything is the fault of the Jews, you believe it. And then when he starts to act on it, you may say it's for the greater good. But in reality, if you have any sort of moral censor, you would say, even if it was true that the Jews are why we so poor, we can't kill them all. You just can't do it. And that's when you could tell when people are in quite, and some people are not honest in that way, where you can agree with people and, or not even agree, but understand, but disagree. Most people think that if you understand that you will agree, but no, that's not the case. I understand quite a bit. That doesn't mean I agree with your methods. Even if I agree with your goal, I don't have to agree with your methods. And the methods are usually what's the evil part. Even if I agree with you, again, I don't have to agree with your goals. I don't have to agree with your methods. Even if I understood and agree with the problem. Your second question: do you think Trick Williams needs another year on NXT before getting caught up to Raw or SmackDown? He ain't gonna get it. I don't. I think once this title run is over, I think it's over for him. He's going up to the main roster, and he might stay in NXT to help build somebody else, but I don't think he's going to be hanging around. I think by May or June, Trick is going to be gone, and he probably could use another year, but I think he's already 30 or something like that, so they need to get him in the mix. 3, what are some of your favorite feuds that involve a mid card title, the Intercontinental US title? Now this is fun. Okay, I like The Miz and Dolph Ziggler. I thought that was fun. I liked the Matt Hardy MVP feud. I thought that was fun. That was for the US belt. I liked the. It's hard for me to say I like the best of 7 kind of stuff that they used to do in WCW, like the best of 7 for like the US title or the TV belt or something. It's hard for me to say I like that kind of stuff, but it stands out as something that I liked. Because I remembered it mostly. I like the Cruiserweight Championship, the Eddie and Ray feud, of course, Cruiserweight title feud. I actually did not hate when Gregory Helms came back and did a run as a mid card Cruiserweight champion. I actually didn't hate that either. Uh, but I wouldn't say it was like one of my favorites, I guess. It's just something that popped into my head at this moment in time. Uh, big fan of Sean and Marty for their Intercontinental title because they put so much effort into that. The Rockers explode. I thought that was actually one of my favorite ones. The Click stuff, you know, ended up being Razor and Diesel, which ended up becoming Razor and Shawn. No, that's backwards. It was Razor and Shawn. It ended up as Razor and Diesel, which ended up back into Razor and Shawn, for the Intercontinental belt. That was great. That was like a year and a half of those guys doing good, fun stuff at the Intercontinental title. Um, hmm. Uh, Triple H and Ric Flair, they had a feud where Flair defended the Intercontinental title against Triple H. I know that sounds weird, right? But about that was what the feud was about. Was Flair was happy he was the Intercontinental champion in his golden years, and Triple H saw that as being disgusting. Like you're Ric Flair and you're happy you're the Intercontinental champion. Like you're wallowing in mediocrity. Want to put you out of your misery. But that was great. I didn't like the Intercontinental champion was getting his ass beat, but it was great. I think Flair lost the belt right before he lost the feud, or maybe right afterwards, one or the other. I was a big fan of the feud between um, Johnny Nitro and Jeff Hardy for the IC title. I was a big fan of what's the other word? Oh, it was one more that I was thinking of. Hmm. It's just slipping my mind. Jericho and Mysterio again for the Intercontinental title. I think they did a title versus mask match. So it's going to be interesting. Those were interesting feuds. 4. Do you think WWE has too many baby faces and not enough strong heels on the main roster? If so, who do you think needs to turn heel? Do I think there's too many baby faces and not enough strong heels? I hmm. I don't know if this is a problem or not because the strongest heels on the roster are typically in factions, and then the faction guys lose a lot. So, like the strongest heel in the company is Jacob Fatu because he doesn't lose. Like he just literally does not lose. He's the only heel that doesn't lose. He might be on the losing team, but he doesn't get pinned. He doesn't get beat. He might be the only one. So I can't really think of like who are the heels that are too strong. I don't really see that as being an issue. 5, he says, were you a fan of the Taboo Tuesday, Cyber Sunday pay-per-views from the mid 2000s? Not really, no. I understood the reason why they existed, but I wasn't a huge fan of them, if we being honest. I didn't like the idea of you order a pay-per-view and you weren't sure what the match was going to be. And of course, you're gonna run the risk of these things being a work, but I I prefer to know what the card's gonna be when I order a pay-per-view. All right, WG Phil has a bunch of questions here. He says, "What are your hopes for 2025 in terms of wrestling and personal life?" Oh, that's a good question. In terms of wrestling, I always hope that creative gets better. I always hope that the business becomes a little bit more popular than it was the previous year. Um, I hope some of the people that I actually think have talent are allowed to actually utilize that talent. So I'm like hoping somebody like Braun Breaker can finally break through and get the push that he deserves, or that he is getting an opportunity to earn. Let's say that I hope that the Netflix deal doesn't end up being one of the death nails for this company. Like it's going to bring in a lot of money, but with that comes a lot of responsibility. So hopefully they can carry that. Same thing over with AEW with the Max deal. I just hope for the growth of the industry and that there is something for young people to like when they get into wrestling. Personally, I hope that you know um, that he had a lot of cancer struggles this year. You know, mom has it, my girlfriend has it. I hope that my mom is really kind of pulling through, but they give you that 5-year window where that even though even if you are in remission, it could always come back within 5 years or something like that. So I'm hoping that they continue to improve and get better. Had also had a bit of a scare with my old man, even though he's pulled through. It wasn't nothing too bad. But I hope for everybody's health and wellness. You know, I don't think too much about my career. Uh, I hope for the growth of the channel, actually. Hope the channel continues to grow. Where at most it becomes a decent second income. Right about now, it's enough to pay my phone bill, and that's about it. But that's still better than nothing. I'm still grateful for that. Thank you, YouTube, for your pittance that ends up just paying my phone bill for the month, because that's just money I don't have to spend out of my account. So the growth of the channel, health and well-being of all of my loved ones, that's probably what I'm looking forward to and hoping on the most in 2025. WG Phil says, second question: could Triple H botching Cena's retirement may have fans turn on him? I actually think that could be the case, but I'm thinking I'm going to meticulously plan this thing. My whole thing is I hope Triple H doesn't just get too excited about being the guy who's doing this, and he starts putting the guys he wants Cena to wrestle out there. So it's not John Cena wastes a bunch of matches with DIY but I don't see him doing that. I don't think anybody would let him get away with that. Like I don't think anybody's gonna be an idiot. Like he's gonna be like, oh yeah, I want to do this thing between John and Johnny Gargano. Like, that's a waste. Maybe at a house show it'd be okay, but no, I don't think so. But I definitely think if he botches it, people are going to turn on him. They're going to shit on him, of course. 3, do you think the female main event in WrestleMania died until they can get the 4 horsewomen back, or they build Rhea versus Bianca? They seem like the only viable and believable female main event. Bianca and Charlotte. Other than those 2 matches, probably not. I think you could forget female main event WrestleMania until it's Bianca and Charlotte, Bianca and Rhea. Then maybe. 4, how many years do you think Punk got in him before he having to retire? Because Triple H is going to have a rough few years of Cena, Orton, Punk, Rock, and Roman all retire before 2030. And Cody saying he's retiring at 40. Seth most likely part-time. Again, I don't believe Cody when he says he's going to retire at 40, because that's like 2 years from now. But Triple H is definitely going to be in trouble after 2025 because a lot of people are going to be gone. Now, in terms of Punk, because Punk was out for 7 years, I don't think he's going to put in 7, but I think he's probably going to go longer than he probably would normally have. So I think Punk's probably going to go another year or 2, and I'm thinking maybe 2028. You're looking at Punk and maybe even Drew McIntyre not even being there anymore, depending on how the business looks. I think by that point in time, you probably won't even have Randy there anymore. So it's going to be an interesting time. But I think of the people on this list so far, Punk is more than likely going to be the last one to retire because he had those 7 years off, and unless he gets like a really serious injury, I can see him maybe wrestling 2 or 3 more years and then calling it a day. But I don't think Roman's got too much longer in the tank. I wouldn't be surprised if Roman doesn't announce his retirement by the end of next year. They're probably not going to let Roman and Cena go in the same year because that would be weird. But I could see Roman probably saying 2026 is it for him, and he's calling it a day. He just looks tired. He looks done. Like he's tired of going to the gym. Number 5, does WWE have a possible successor when Triple H retires from booking? Will it be someone like Shane or Stephanie or an outside of the McMahon Levette's family? Well, if something happens to Triple H, they really are going to be in trouble. But then I think it'll probably be William Regal or somebody like that after that. Or they might just pull Shawn into it. That's probably what they're doing. Is I think that they're probably preparing Shawn to take over for Triple H and then having Punk preparing to take over for Shawn. But Shawn's older than Triple H, so who knows? But I definitely think Punk's going to end up taking over NXT eventually. I think they've been preparing everybody for that. But I think nothing short of death is going to get Triple H out of his seat right now because he's been waiting for a long time for this. In terms of who would take over for him, if something, let's say, he gets hit by a car or something like that, I think they're screwed. If we're being honest, because I don't think Michael Hayes or Bruce Pritchard have come back yet, and even if they were brought back, who knows what kind of authority they would have, what kind of pull they would have. So all of that's very interesting. But if Triple H retires, yeah, they're going to be in trouble. He started, maybe it'd be like Jeremy Borash or something like that. Who knows? I know Jeremy Borash does a lot of work for NXT, but they will certainly need some help if Triple H were to go down. Number 6, do you think James Gunn will be the savior of the DCU, or is it just a way to get his friends paid, especially his brother and wife getting roles? Do you think even the X-Men after Secret Wars could save the MCU? Well, I think there's more to look forward to in the MCU than the DCU. X-Men absolutely has some level of intrigue to it. We've had 100 X-Men movies, but we haven't had one in the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet. And I think that's going to get a lot of people's attention if done right. This Superman thing, though, I think it's off to a bad start. Like I said, there's too many extra characters being brought in. But James Gunn actually did a decent job with Peacemaker. He did a great job with, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy. So maybe he can be, but I'm interested in what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm interested in watching the movie, but I'm interested in what's going to happen. 7, favorite Christmas, entertainment-wise, story-wise, visual-wise. The setting actually feels like Christmas. Oh, famous Christmas entertainment. Oh, hmm. I didn't see it this year, but I was always partial to Charlie Brown Christmas. I always liked Charlie Brown Christmas. I haven't seen it this year though. Back when I was a kid, that's how I knew it was Christmas season because Charlie Brown Christmas would come on. You also would have certain Christmas movies that would come on, but probably Bad Santa is one of my favorite movies though because it feels like a really adult Christmas. Lispers Anonymous, Vince enters a voice chat with Cody and Damian Priest about their dissatisfaction of booking under Triple H. I don't think either one of those guys would be upset about it, but it'll probably sound like Damian. I've been watching you very, very closely on Monday Night Raw. You're working very hard. I've appreciated everything you've been able to do, but my God, it must be tough. Over there wrestling Gunther, he's massive. He's got a square jaw. He's fantastic. You're just not gonna be able to get over that guy. Maybe you should come over to SmackDown. I could work with you. I could give you the rub. What would Damian Priest say to something like that? Cody, yeah. You think I'm trash or something? You think I'm garbage? Not really understanding where I fit in this company. I think I'm a top guy. I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm not saying you're not doing good. I think you're doing great, but you're missing something. Just a little bit of something. Maybe I ought to ask the Sage. Maybe I'll ask the Sage. Call on the phone. Sage. Uh, yeah. It's Damian Priest. Damian Priest. You're the rock star. You're the Punisher, the Judgment Day. All rise for Damian Priest. You gotta feel it. Feel it, damn it. All rise for the Judgment Day. You gotta feel it, damn it. More right in here. Get it right in the guts. Right in your guts. All rise. I don't know, man. Whatever. You put me on the spot. Uh, is that it? Is that the last one? Was that the last batch of questions? This took longer than I thought. But I don't know if it's the last batch of questions or not. No, it's not. I got two more batches. Big Armada. It says, any advice for balancing content creation with work life? I'm starting to get back into making music, and I want to try and make it my side hustle and not just a hobby. All right. So it depends on what you do for a living. Um, and it also depends on what kind of life situation you got. Married with kids, you're probably gonna need like a soundproof room, or you're gonna have to bite the bullet and work when everybody goes to sleep. Almost all of the content creators I know that have children, they either record while their children are at school, or they wait till their kids go to school, go to bed. But then the wife goes to bed alone, and that's gonna be weird. But it depends on what kind of career you got. Are you working 12-hour shifts? Are you working 10 hours, 6 hours? So all you gotta do is it should start out as a hobby. Start out as, an hour or two here and there. That's how I started my channel. Was you start out, if you can steal 30 minutes here and there, 30 minutes before bed. That's what I do. Um, Sometimes an hour before bed, depending on how long the review needs to be. And sometimes I'll shorten the review because I got to get up earlier than usual. So I may skip things on purpose. Like some people, like, oh, you didn't see this. Like I kind of skipped it on purpose. Um, because I need to get this review in at a certain time so I can go to bed. So that might be one of the things you're thinking about. If you're doing music and you have a lot of spare time on the weekend, just do it on the weekend. If you have no spare time on a Saturday, but you got spare time on a Wednesday, do it on a Wednesday. But it's all about stealing time when you can. And I don't know how much time you need. You might need a little bit longer than an hour or an hour or two. If you're a night owl, get some coffee and work on it in the morning. Maybe work on it before you go to work. It's music. Maybe you can tinker on your lunch break or whatever the case may be. But you should be able to steal little bits of time everywhere. And even sometimes when it comes to my video, sometimes I can do a video at work, which, when I sound like I'm 900 feet tall, that's usually what I'm doing is I just stole 15 or 20 minutes at the job. And I found a corner or something like that where I can do a video real quick. I haven't become Devontae level with that yet. I know he does that. His stuff never sounds weird, but I'm always sound like I'm at the bottom of a well. But usually, what I'll do is I'll take notes of what I want to do when I'm off or when I want to do it on a break. You know, if I have to do something other than a review, if I want to do like a topic or something. But steal minutes when you can. That's how you build, what's important. It's always important to have things that are important to you. Second question is also, do you think Jey Uso is over enough to have a solo match against The Rock at some point? Not at WrestleMania, but maybe a SummerSlam or a Royal Rumble match. I definitely think he could. The question would be, of course, if The Rock would actually do it, which is probably no. I don't think so. I don't think The Rock would even be interested. All right, DeAndre Dukes has the last 5 questions. One, have you ever attended a WWF, WCW, or ECW pay-per-view during the 90s? The answer is no. I never made it to any pay-per-views. I only made it to a house show in 96. I would have loved to have gone to WCW, though, or an ECW show. But I couldn't tell you if there was any ECW pay-per-views in the Detroit area in the 90s. I think I probably would have had to go to Ohio or something like that to see one. Two, do you wish for finishers to go back to being used once to end a match? I'm okay with people kicking out of finishers, but it can't be every week. It can be multiple times in a match. I'm actually more interested in people countering finishers than I am in them kicking out of finishers. I used to be super excited about people kicking out of finishers that almost never happened, but now it happens so often. I'm actually more interested in people counter them. 3, who do you see is being wasted the most under Triple H's booking? Oh, how much time you got? I'll give you 2. Bianca Belair, absolutely being wasted. Austin Theory, I'll give you another one. Braun Breaker, even though he's the Intercontinental Champion, I know. I also think he's wasting quite a few of the undercard guys like Legado del Fantasma, like Andrade. I just like Andrade. I know a lot of people don't really care about him. I just like Andrade. Zelina Vega, she's very tiny, but when you have another tiny person as a champion and Liv Morgan, it could actually work. Who else is like? There's probably Tiffany Stratton. Clearly, there's quite a few people that are not doing probably what they could be doing under Triple H, but it's Bianca is probably number 1 on my list. Number 4, what do you want to see out of Raw now that it's on Netflix? I wanted to see fewer commercials, but I'm not going to get that. I would have loved to have had fewer commercials, but that's not going to be it. So, what I want to see is maybe edgier storytelling, not tons of blood, not sexual content, but just a little bit harder edged because not on cable anymore. So maybe not so much in terms of censoring the crowd, maybe letting things go a little bit in terms of, a little bit more blood in the program, just a little bit more. I don't need everybody bleeding gusters every week. Um, and I think that's probably it. Just go from 5 to 6.5 a little bit. You don't got to go to 8 because I don't need people cursing and guys yelling "suck my cock" on Netflix. That's because it's on Netflix. I don't need that. But just a little bit harder edge on the product. I don't think we're going to get the entertainment value back. The fun stuff with guys like the Miz, or even though I think sometimes that was a little too much. But the Miz and Pretty Deadly and guys like that, I would love to have more of those guys on TV. And 5, do you have faith in James Gunn's DC plans? Again, I looked at Superman, and I'm not sure what his plans even are. I'm not even sure he's sure what his plans are. So no, I'm not buying in. Not yet. Not yet. So let's go into the comment section real quick, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up. Nate G says only time multi-finish kickouts were good was Austin Angle. I think that sometimes it can be interesting, but when you spam them and you do them all the time and you do them multiple times in a month, it doesn't look good. I think if you hit a guy with a finish, the crowd accepts that and it's over. Dennis King says CM Punk did John Cena move tonight. Is that a sign? CM Punk did a John Cena move tonight. Oh, he's working a house show? I didn't know that. Punk is working house shows? Nate CC, do you think it's lame, as I do, that Damien falls down on his choke slam? Defeats the purpose. No, I think it's supposed to be like a emphasis. Like Undertaker used to guide his opponents down in choke slams too. I would prefer if he didn't, you know, but I think it just makes it look different. It actually looks a little bit more impactful when he goes down with them. I actually like his original finisher. AJ3 says, speaking of Charlie Brown, did you see the clip of the voice actor who played him on YouTube got arrested for choking out his girlfriend? What? Holy hell. No, I did not see that at all. Yikes. Khalil Bennett, an early women's Rumble winner, considering they're adding new titles, does this dilute the Rumble in general? Nothing could change the Rumble as long as it ends up in a championship match at WrestleMania, and you can't really dilute it. An early winner, if I had to just say, I think this person will win, Charlotte, for the women. I think Triple H wants to book his version of Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. Vince got to do it. I think Triple H wants to do it. I think Charlotte is one of Triple H's pet projects. I think there's a reason she hasn't come back yet. I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't come back to do the old I'm declaring for the Royal Rumble gimmick. If she don't pop up for nothing but that. So I definitely would see Charlotte and then maybe Charlotte and Rhea at WrestleMania. He says fundamentally James Gunn doesn't understand Superman. I've seen a lot of people say that. A lot of Superman purists online. A lot of Superman purists thinks James Gunn doesn't understand Superman. I think he probably, Superman is one of those superheroes that he does occupy a rarefied air in terms of what he means to the universe that he operates in. And not everybody can get that right. I think people keep trying to make it dark. And that's the one thing that I don't really like is the people hate Superman. They're throwing cans at him. I'm like, why do they have to hate Superman? Like, I don't understand why the people would hate Superman. And that's the one thing I don't understand. I don't understand why the people of Metropolis would have to hate Superman. And I don't understand why you would write that. He goes around, saving people from burning buildings and they hate him. I don't know. He fights back aliens and they hate his guts for it. That's weird. That's weird. Dennis King says, where would you rank the Shelton Benjamin, Carlito, Johnny Nitro triple threat match among other triple threat matches? I'm telling you, that match was really good. It was really good. I forget what event. I think it was it Vengeance? Something like that, where they had that triple threat match. It was really good. Actually, those guys had like a bit of a round robin thing going on where it was like Shelton and Carlito at first, I believe, correct, if I remember correctly. And then Nitro ended up as the champion. And then I think that was his first title win too. And then he ended up feuding with Carlito and Shelton Benjamin. They had a triple threat match. Oh, what event was that? I think it was in 2006 as well. It was on one of those Raw pay-per-views, but it was a really good match. I'm not good at ranking things because it would require for me to put a lot of time into thinking about it. But it was a good match. So Nate G said, do you think they're going to ruin Cena's return by having him wrestle Logan, the crypto scammer Paul? He's going to wrestle Logan Paul. That's probably going to happen. But I don't think it's going to be at WrestleMania. It might be at one of those Crown Jewel shows or something. And I think that's the best place for it. At like a Crown Jewel or King and Queen of the Ring or something like that. It might be the perfect place to do it. It's a non-canon show where the only thing that matters is who won the King of the Ring. That's the only thing that really matters. The rest of the show could be fluff. It's a spectacle. You want to see John Cena beat up a guy who you want to see get beat up. So a lot of people say Logan Paul doesn't deserve the platform, but who cares? I would do it. I would book that match. But it wouldn't be at WrestleMania or SummerSlam or a Big Four event. It would be in Saudi. SpongeBob is an optimistic character. He's very cheerful. I don't watch SpongeBob, so I can't tell you, but I never really see SpongeBob that he's not smiling. He's very cheerful. Dennis King said that's a new age thing. People have a sympathy for heels. Yeah, I mean, it started out with, again, you got to look at it from the way they view criminology. if you look at heels from the perspective of like people sympathize with criminals, thieves, murderers, not rapists, but you know, uh, all those kinds of people. They come up with all kinds of reasons why what they did was justified, and they watch TV shows where all sorts of dastardly, underhanded behavior is justified and not condemned, or it goes unpunished, or even worse, somebody says, I cheated on you because you're a bum. And then the guy's like, "You're right. I am a bum. I have to get my life together." And you start being like, "What? Why would you? Why would you agree with this?" But that's just kind of how people are. Do I think WWE missed out on the opportunity of turning John Cena heel? Nope. I don't think there was any more money in Cena turning heel. There was more money in him being a babyface. I have yet to see anybody make a convincing argument that there was money in Cena being a heel. Dennis King says, "I wish that we had more stipulation matches. Loser leaves town, hair, Viagra on the pole." Oh, just kidding on the last one. We do need more stipulations, especially for main events of Raw. I think, sometimes you might be able to get away with like a ladder match on TV or a tables match on TV or something like that. That's the one thing AEW does have over WWE is they're not scared to use the gimmicks. WWE sometimes runs away from the gimmicks. I understand it's supposed to be rare, but why can't we have a cage match on TV every once in a while? Chris Rivers, that is his name, because I know Big Pun's name is Chris. I think his name was Chris Rios, though. Top Dog says, "You said Triple H going all in on teenagers and this current era will hurt him in the end. Can you explain more on that?" Yeah, I mean, when you look at how Triple H is, for starters, he's booking for the older audience, okay? And a lot of the stuff that he's doing is leaning into the older audience. The Wayne Deagle belt, for instance, that's supposed to pop people like me, in your 30s and 40s, because you've seen that belt and you've seen it all the time. That belt doesn't mean anything to the kids. If you grew up watching John Cena, you don't care about that belt. Like, what does it mean to you? But the teenagers are the TikTok generation, and appealing to them, they're gonna grow out of it. You always run that risk of, if a kid is 14 or whatever, that he's gonna eventually feel like wrestling is lame and move away from it. And if you don't have anything that's gonna catch him and keep him engaged, you're gonna lose a lot of that audience. And especially if those people who grew up watching Roman Reigns or grew up watching John Cena, and now those guys are going to be gone, it's going to be an interesting piece of business to see how you're going to handle that when those guys are ultimately gone, and whether that audience is going to stick around. You said John Cena didn't want kids. Yeah, that's true. So he got blackballed because Fat Joe failed to promote him the right way, and Big Punisher's widow was homeless thanks to him. It ruined her family and Pun's legacy. Well, didn't they put out a video of Big Pun pistol whipping her or something like that? I think that ruined his legacy. I know it's a lot of people stopped talking about Big Pun after that. I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but I think she came out and started saying how he was abusive and everything. Now I know Chris Rivers didn't really go too far, but I don't know if that was Fat Joe's fault, because I don't think he ever signed to Terror Squad. I don't. I I think I may have heard a couple of mixtape records, but I don't know like the entire history of Chris Rivers as an MC. So Hogan was also a bigger star than Stone Cold. Even Stone Cold was a huge draw himself. Absolutely. If Punk does main event Mania should be against Cena. I agree. A Vader versus Hansen match. Oh my God, that's when Vader lost his eye. Oh, that was disgusting. That was sick. I don't even want to look at pictures of that. That's gross. Travis Tippin says he just found out Rey Mysterio uncle died. Yes, the original Rey Mysterio. Um, yeah, it's that was sad, but and the crazy thing is, just like with Roman, his father died earlier this year, and then his uncle died later this year. Just like Roman's uncle and father that both died this year too. That's crazy. All right. I thank everybody for stopping by. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.